You have loved someone, and somewhere inside that love felt yourself disappearing. You gave your time, your attention, your laughter, the softest parts of your interior life, and somewhere along the way, you started to wonder if you had traded yourself for the feeling of being wanted. Maybe it happened slowly. Maybe you woke up one morning next to someone and realized you did not recognize the person you had become in order to keep them close. Maybe you told yourself small lies every day, softening your edges, swallowing your needs, smiling when you wanted to scream because you believed that love required that kind of sacrifice. And maybe the most painful part of all was that nobody ever told you there was another way. Nobody sat you down and said that what you were experiencing was not love failing you, but rather something much more specific, something that a French philosopher, sitting in a Parisian cafe in the middle of the 20th century, had already named and dissected with terrifying precision. Jean-Paul Sartre believed something that most people are never allowed to hear. He believed that the deepest problem in human relationships is not that we do not love enough, but that we have been taught to love in a way that requires us to stop being free. And if that sentence sounds abstract, consider this. Every time you changed yourself to be more lovable, every time you hid a part of who you are to avoid conflict, every time you stayed in a dynamic that slowly hollowed you out because leaving felt impossible, you were living inside what Sartre called bad faith. You were pretending to be something fixed, something definable, something safe and predictable, because the person in front of you needed you to be that, and because you were terrified of what there would happen if you simply were yourself. Here is the thing that nobody tells you about truly free people and love. They do not fall in love the same way, not because they are colder or more detached or incapable of depth, but because they have understood something that changes everything. Something Sartre spent his entire philosophical life trying to communicate to a world that was not ready to listen. And once you understand it too, you will never be able to look at your relationships, your patterns, your hunger for validation, the same way again. Sartre opens his existentialist framework with a statement that sounds simple until you sit with it long enough for it to become devastating. Existence precedes essence. What this means is that you were not born with a fixed nature, a predetermined personality, a soul already shaped into a specific form that your life is simply meant to express. You arrived first, raw and undefined, and everything you are has been constructed through choices, through actions, through the 1,000 small decisions you made about who to become in the presence of other people. This is not a comforting idea. It is, in fact, one of the most disorienting truths a human being can confront, because it means that you cannot blame your past, your upbringing, your trauma, or your circumstances for who you are right now. It means that you are radically, inescapably, terrifyingly free. And it means that love, real love, cannot be built on the fantasy of possession, because you cannot possess something that is always in the process of becoming. Think about the last time you felt jealous in a relationship, not the surface jealousy of seeing someone flirt with your partner, but the deeper kind, the kind that lives in your chest like a slow fire and whispers that you are not enough, that you could be replaced, that the person you love might one day look at you and decide to become someone else entirely. That fear is not weakness. That fear is actually your unconscious recognition of what Sartre was pointing at. People are not things. They do not stay. They are not yours to keep. And the love that tries to make them yours, that tries to nail down their freedom, that asks them to become a fixed and predictable source of emotional safety, is a love that is already at war with what they fundamentally are. Sartre called this the fundamental conflict of consciousness. When two people meet, something happens that is both beautiful and immediately dangerous. Each person becomes visible to the other. Each person is seen. And being seen, truly seen, is both what we most desire and what we most fear, because the gaze of another person has the power to define us, to reduce us, to transform us from a free subject into an object in someone else's story. He described this in his concept of the look, the regard, the moment when another consciousness turns its attention toward you and you feel yourself becoming something specific in their eyes. You are no longer infinite and open. You are suddenly a character, you have a role, and the tragedy is that most love stories are actually stories about two people fighting to be the one who looks rather than the one who is looked at, two people trying to define rather than be defined, two people trying to secure their own freedom by making the other person into something stable and safe. Pause here for a second, because this is exactly where so many people are suffering right now, and most of them have never had a name for what they are carrying. If you have ever felt like you had to perform a version of yourself in a relationship, if you have ever felt the quiet exhaustion of being loved for who you pretended to be instead of who you actually are, if you have ever given so much of yourself trying to secure someone else's love that you stopped recognizing your own desires, I want you to know that you are not broken, you are not too much, and you are not asking for something impossible. You are simply someone who has been trying to love inside a framework that was never designed for free people. Drop a comment below right now. Copy and paste this if it speaks to you. I have been loving from fear, not from freedom, and I am ready to understand the difference. Your comment is not just for you. Someone else is going to read it tonight and feel, maybe for the first time in a long time, that they are not completely alone in what they have been living through. Bad faith is the concept Sartre used to describe the escape we make from our own freedom. It is what happens when a person convinces themselves that they have no choice, that they are simply the product of their circumstances, that their role in a relationship is fixed and unchangeable, that they cannot leave, cannot speak, cannot want something different, because that is just who they are. Bad faith is the waiter who performs being a waiter so completely that he forgets he chose this job and can choose to leave it. Bad faith is the woman who tells herself she stays because she loves him, when the truth she cannot face is that she stays because the thought of choosing freely, of standing alone in her own life without the structure of that relationship to define her, is more frightening than the unhappiness she already knows. Bad faith is comfortable. It gives you an excuse. It gives you a role. It gives you the feeling that your life is happening to you rather than being built by you, and that feeling, however false, is deeply soothing to a consciousness that is exhausted by the weight of its own freedom. Truly free people do not fall in love this way. They enter relationships not because they need to fill an emptiness, but because they choose to share a fullness. This is the distinction that Sartre and later Simone de Beauvoir, who lived and loved and fought through these ideas alongside him in real time, tried to articulate against the entire romantic tradition of Western culture. The tradition says love is completion. It says that somewhere out there is a person who will make you whole, who will quiet the existential noise, who will give your life a meaning that you could not manufacture alone. Sartre says that tradition is a beautiful and seductive lie, and that the person who falls in love looking for completion will always end up in a relationship built on mutual bad faith, two people pretending to be fixed so they can be what the other needs, two people slowly suffocating the most alive parts of themselves in exchange for the security of being needed. The free person who loves differently does not ask their partner to be their mirror. They do not need constant validation, not because they are indifferent to being loved, but because they have accepted what Sartre calls the fundamental anxiety of existence, the dizzying recognition that you are responsible for your own meaning, that no other person can carry that weight for you, and that asking them to try is a form of violence dressed up as devotion. When a free person loves, they love what is actually there, a consciousness, a becoming, a radical openness. Being who is never finished. They love the process, not the product. They love the person in their becoming, not the idea they have constructed of them. And because of this, they are not destroyed when that person changes, when they grow in unexpected directions, when they disagree or challenge or refuse to remain inside the shape that love has tried to create for them. There is one more layer here that even people who have read Sartre superficially tend to miss, and it reframes everything. Sartre was not saying that love is impossible or that commitment is a trap. He was saying that authentic love, the only love worth having, the only love that does not eventually become a prison, is a love between two people who both refuse to stop being free. Authenticity for Sartre is the courage to acknowledge your freedom even when that freedom is terrifying, to make choices that are Genuinely yours rather than performances designed to secure approval and to allow the people you love to do the same. Authentic love does not grip. It does not surveil. It does not require the other person to become less than they are. It holds open space for the other consciousness to continue, existing as exactly what it is, a wild, unpredictable, irreducible subject who chose you today and may choose you again tomorrow, but whose choice only means something because it was never guaranteed. You feel the weight of this, do you not? You feel how different this is from how most of us were taught to love, and how much courage it would take to actually live it. That gap between the love you have been practicing and the love Sartre is describing is not a measure of your failure. It is a measure of how much the world has kept this from you, and the fact that you are still here, still reading, still willing to sit inside this discomfort, instead of clicking away to something easier, tells you something important about yourself. It tells you that some part of you already knew that the love you have been practicing was not enough. Some part of you has been waiting for someone to say it out loud. If this video opened something in you, if it named something you have been carrying without language, please give it a like right now. Not for an algorithm, but because this idea needs to reach the person who is sitting somewhere tonight, feeling like they are failing at love, when the truth is that nobody ever taught them what love between free people actually looks like. Your like is how this message finds them. And if you want to keep going deeper into these ideas, into Sartre, into existentialism, into what it actually means to build a life and a self and a love that belongs to you rather than to fear, subscribe to this channel. Every video here is made for people who are done with easy answers, for people who would rather feel the full weight of a difficult truth than the comfortable numbness of a simple one, for people like you who already know, somewhere deep and quiet, that the life they are capable of living is so much larger than the one they have settled for. This channel was built for that person. Come back. There is so much more to understand.